Chapter 5. Stupid Children. 3 trucks had been lost in the air attack. 11 soldiers had been killed, 9 of them conscripts. Stupid children, never even got a chance to fire their rifles. The words, spoken long ago by the seemingly deranged man on the troop train, kept going round and round in my head, as did images of Rosy Cheeks and the other boys, now underground, tangled together in death. There were fewer wounded than it had seemed at first, less than 20, but 7 of these were serious. Shortly after getting underway again, we entered Ovruch, a town where a medical station had been set up in a church. The truck carrying the 7 badly injured soldiers pulled off the road and stopped in front of the small church-turned-hospital. Our convoy continued on, headed away from the place. I looked back. I saw something I will never forget. A nurse, wearing a blood-smeared rubber apron, was making her way toward a smoke-belching incinerator. In her arms was a human leg. Because of the losses we sustained in the air attack, platoons were reorganized. At his request, Hals Kessler joined ours, the 7th, and sat next to me on the truck as the convoy wound its way eastward. Head wrapped turban-like with bandaging, he repeatedly thanked me for coming to help him out after he had been wounded. The way he made it sound, I was the greatest person in the world, and he owed his life to me. Though all of Hal's praise and gratitude were undeserved, the 2 of us soon became fast friends. Jacob and Oscar made it a foursome. As the convoy growled along, Hals worked with the point of his field knife to make a hole in the piece of shrapnel I had removed from his head. Then he used a bootlace to hang the thing around his neck. He wore it until the day he died. Our next taste of battle came a few hours after leaving Ovruch and the church hospital there. A rocket, fired from a Panzerfaust, a bazooka-like weapon, hissed past, no more than a meter above the truck in front of us in the convoy. 50 caliber machine guns erupted all along the convoy, and from the trucks we began firing our Mausers as well. A breathtaking barrage pounded at a cluster of trees in a field off to our right. Again and again I pulled the trigger of my rifle. The trees were shredded by gunfire, as was a man, a partisan who had been hiding in them. Hit by countless bullets, he did a wild death dance. It was comically hideous, and despite myself, I laughed, ashamed, embarrassed, and puzzled by my strange, inappropriate reaction. 2 other figures were suddenly racing across the field. One carried a Panzerfaust, the other, a child of about 8 or 9, lugged a shell for the weapon. Almost instantly they met the same fate as the first man, and fell heavily together under the barrage we laid down on them. "Cease fire!" Doberman yelled. The smell of burned gunpowder and cordite was redolent in the air. The Mauser was hot in my hand. I checked the breech to make sure the action was clear. I reloaded, wondering if any of my shots had hit anyone. "That was just a kid that we killed," intoned Oscar. "A kid that was trying to kill you," said Doberman, his horrid face half turned toward us. Our ultimate destination was battalion headquarters at Tarnopol. Our first glimpse of the place came at night, and when we were still some 25 kilometers from it. Suddenly ahead and far to the east there was a series of false sunrises. What we were seeing was a distant artillery barrage. First came multicolored flashes of light, then faint rumbling sounds like rolling peals of thunder. Followed. Nervous eyes, hooded by helmets, exchanged glances. I held my Mauser tightly. Though the night was cool, my hands were sweating terribly. I felt like I was wearing wet gloves. Later that night, we reached a supply dump in a densely wooded area. The place, under heavy guard, consisted of hundreds of boxes stacked to different heights and looked like a scale model of a small city. Doberman ordered us off the truck and then began talking with a master sergeant, a tough-looking little man who seemed to be in charge of the place. "Gilbert," said Dobermann, "you do not recognize me, do you?" "Ralph?" said the man, peering closer in the dark. "Is that you?" "Yes. What a grenade has made of me." The two began talking about old times, the master sergeant keeping his eyes averted from Dobermann's face. In a shack lit by a single yellow glaring kerosene lamp, I could see men, soldiers. One was sound asleep, curled up in a corner. Another was trying to read something in the yellow light. Most just sat, their arms clasped round their legs and their heads resting on their knees. One of them looked up. His glance seemed to fix on me. I looked away. More of the trucks from our convoy arrived at the supply dump, most of them piled high with munitions. Our drivers joined those in the shed. Some of the trucks were already fully loaded with supplies. Others, just vacated by us, were relatively empty. On orders from Dobermann and the other Felds, we loaded all the trucks with as many crates as they could carry. Some of the crates contained food, clothing, and medical supplies. Most contained munitions, bullets, mortars, mines, and artillery shells, and weighed a ton. As soon as a truck was completely loaded, the master sergeant called out a name, and a soldier emerged from the yellow glow of the shed, their expressions varying from grim to terrified. They climbed behind the wheel and drove off, headed for various units of the 4th Division in and around Tarnopol. I talked to one of the drivers as he waited his turn to leave. I do not remember his name. His voice quavering with nerves, he told me that he and the other drivers were from a punishment brigade. Men in such units, for some infraction of the rules, were denied leave and mail from home, ate last, and were given the most hazardous duty. In this case, they were being made to drive trucks containing large amounts of explosives, often almost straight through enemy lines. No more than half of them were expected to make it. We finished up at about 3 a.m. All of the trucks had departed. We undid our bedrolls, lay down wherever we could, and soon fell into an exhausted sleep.